Steve here with Half Dozen Customs. We're back out here on the Jeep this evening, and we're gonna be working on this guy. So I did do a little bit of work on this off camera. So I had actually hooked up our actuator and made sure everything worked properly, and it does. So with these switch, so this is a DTDP switch, double toggle, double pole switch. So both ways are on, and it always flips back to off in the center. So up is on, down is on, off is in the center. And then, you know, when you're using these actuators, you know, red is power, ground is black, and it'll make it go out. It'll actuate out. And then if you switch it and do the black to power and the red to ground, it'll make the actuator come back in. So that's why I have these wires crossed here in the middle, so that on one side it's power to power and ground to ground, and then on the other side of the switch, when I push the switch this way, it reverses it. It grounds the power and gives power to the ground, which will make the actuator come back in. I hope that makes sense to you guys. Now, they do sell switches that this part is already done for you. So all you have to do is hook your power and your ground up to one side and then hook up your actuator and you're good to go. It's already done. Now, this was kind of a test to see if I could make this work. Now, a good actuator runs about 120 bucks. I don't know what the good switches are. I didn't look into the good switches. I bought the cheapest switch possible and the cheapest actuator possible, and I think I spent like 30 bucks on it. So, and reason being is because I don't know if it's gonna work or not. So, this is all just a test. I mean, it should work. I don't see why it wouldn't. But, you know, I wasn't gonna spend a bunch of money until I knew that it worked. So now what we need to do is we need to get this actuator mounted into the truck. This actuator, like I said, it was one of the cheapest actuators that I could find. I think it was like 20 bucks, and then I spent 10 bucks on two switches. Reason being that I bought two switches is because his gas pedal actuates too. He can raise and lower the gas pedal. So we're going to put that on a matching switch to this guy. So that's why I bought the two, so that we can do both of them. But we need to make this work in the truck. There is this factory little setup here where the old push-pull lever that was mounted on the dash used to hook up to. And this guy, he fits right in there. But I want it coming in from this way. So what we're gonna do is we're just gonna cut on each side, and I'm gonna remove this little bit. We'll round it up real nice and hopefully be able to get this in there. Put a screw and a bolt through it. This came with some screws and some bolts. And then once we get this hooked up on this side, I can figure out where this lands in the truck. There is actually a bar that like goes from the firewall to the dashboard. That's a good sturdy solid bar, and it actually has two holes in the side, but it's off to the left. So we're gonna have to like build a bracket that comes off of that and goes over to this guy. And it'll land this guy like right in the center where the old push and pull guy was, and we can just put the toggle right there. So it looks like it's all coming together. But like I said, I need to figure out, we need to get this in here, put this back in the truck, figure out the measurement from that bar that's a factory piece of the truck over to where this lands, so that we can make a bracket that, you know, comes over and mounts to this guy. So that's where we're at right now. I'm gonna start cutting this and get this all cleaned up so that we can mount this to it and go from there. I really hate to cut this like this because of being a factory piece, but that's what I got to do to make this work. Not that it'll ever happen, but worst case scenario, you can always hold it back on, right? Alright, so we'll just cut the, you know, the little hoop off that connected the two pieces. I rounded them up real nice. Let's see where we're at. I may still need to do some trimming and grinding on that because I don't want that piece to interfere with this. It shouldn't, because as this extends out, then we're clearing the body of this actuator. So we should be okay. I don't want to set this down in metal shavings. So it looks like we need to spread this apart a little bit. Plenty of room now. I want plenty of clearance so that this thing doesn't get hung up on anything. Looks like we may need a little bit longer of a screw. No big deal, I bet I have some. We'll drop this down back into the truck. We'll go inside and we'll see where we end up at. Alright, let's go look inside and see what we got. So I kind of sat in here and kind of held it up, and I was like, okay, this should work. Alright. So here's this bar that I was talking about, which is a factory bar, and there's actually two holes in it right here that we can nut and bolt something over here. I think I want this thing straight up and down. I don't know. I guess, you know what I should probably do? What I should probably do is we should probably bolt this thing back together. Bolt it back together so that it's hinging. Then I can bring the thing over here and we can hook it up
and I can hold this and see if I can make it work and see where the best spot for it is. Now, when this gets all finalized in the truck, I will shrink wrap everything so that there's no open holes in the back of this switch. So that's a problem. So it works, but it can't hold the weight of the door. The door is too much for it, it just pushes it back. Okay, so let me see if I can figure out a bracket for this. And see if we can make something that works. Take a measurement about 3/4 of an inch over from that bar. Okay, so what would be ideal is if I had like a rectangular tube or a square tube that was 3/4 of an inch, but I don't think that I do. So we're gonna have to make something. I'm gonna go dig through my scrap pile real quick and grab a piece of metal so I think we're gonna go like yay long, and we'll put 2 holes in it so that we can mount it to that frame piece that's factory part of the truck in there, so that we can nut and bolt it, and then we'll come over and up so that we can nut and bolt that actuator to it. Hopefully that'll be enough. You know, the actuator, the way that they have everything is, you know, it's like this. So the actuator fits in the middle. So we may have to like bend another bracket to come up on the other side and weld it in place so that we can nut and bolt it. And then it's kind of clamping on that, and not necessarily just relying on one edge of the actuator. You know, those ends are plastic. So, but I think for testing purposes, we'll just make it one little over and up, and we'll put a nut and bolt through it, and we'll see if we can get it to work. And then if it works, then we'll make another little piece that comes up and over on the other side, and we'll weld it in place. So let me go see what I can find as far as some scrap metal goes. I'll be back. All right, so I found just a piece of scrap metal over there.
just do like a temporary mock-up. I can get to one of the bowl holes, so I kind of held it up there where I think that I needed it. I'm gonna drill a hole in here so that we can bolt this to the truck. And then I have a small hole we're gonna drill up here, and we're gonna round this corner off nice with the hole, and then we can bolt the actuator to this side and see if it does what it's supposed to do. If it does what it's supposed to do, I'll design a better one of these. But for right now, this is just kind of a test. So it's a piece of 16th inch steel, so it's good chunk of metal. I'm gonna get the drill press set up real quick, and we'll drill a couple holes in here. Let's see. Way too far. Alright, so what I went and I did, and I drilled a few extra holes in here to see if maybe we can find a happy spot for it. So the first one that I did here, this first hole that we're going to try, it's moving the bracket up, which will hopefully move the actuator a little more level. So we got it working. We know that it works. Now it seems like, depending on where I have the actuator angled, it works better. I think just all in all, I need a stronger actuator. This actuator, like I said, was only like 15 bucks and it did like 4.5 pounds. Now, this vet thing, you know, I didn't weigh it, but I highly doubt that it weighs more than 5 pounds. But I think with the way that it angles, it changes the weight of it. It's putting, you know, this thing may not quite be 5 pounds. The actuator is 4.5 pounds, but you know, at a certain angle, the pressure that it's putting on it is greater than the 4.5 pounds. So I'm gonna go back online and do some more research. and see if I can find another cheap one that is that size that does more weight. You know, maybe we can get one that does 10 pounds at that size. So, you know, the smaller they are, the less weight that they can hold. I forget what the $120 one was, but I know it was more than 4.5 pounds. So, we'll see. I may play around with this a little bit more, but I think I'm gonna just go do some research real quick and see what we can find. If I can find one that does 10 pounds, you know, and it's only, you know, 20 or 30 bucks or something like that, I'm just gonna order it and get it here. I think these things are super cool. You know, even if I don't use this one that we have in the truck right now, I'm sure I'll find something to use it for, because it sure is a cool little thing. This is my first time doing a linear actuator on anything, and I think it's pretty cool. I am sure that I'll be using it more. So I'll check back in with you guys a little bit later. Like I said, I think the next thing that we're gonna end up doing here is putting the motor back in. So I may be back with you guys on that. So I'll see you guys in a little bit. All right, so I went in. I got another one ordered. A little bit more money. Looks like it's about $45. This one was $20. I just looked when I went in there. So $45. This one is a 2-inch stroke, so it has 2 inches of. And I think it's too much, because if you go up all the way, we'll be okay with this. I better go change that. Anyways, I guess I'll go change it, because I ordered one that was 1-inch stroke, so that that way it didn't open up too far. And anyways, like 220 pounds of force. This one has 4 pounds, so 220 pounds. I don't think we'll have any problems with it holding that thing open now. So last video, or last night, we left off with getting that cowl vent to work on an actuator, which we did get it working, but it doesn't hold enough weight. So the weight of the vent itself is enough that it actually pushes the actuator back in under the weight. I can kind of get it, I don't know if you guys can see it over there, like I can get it to stay up if I play with it enough. Like it'll just catch just the right spot and it'll stay up. But if you touch it or you bang on the truck, it falls down. So I did order a new one last night. We have that coming. It should be here sometime next week. This one that we did only held it was 4.5 pounds of Newton force or something like that. I'm not into that kind of stuff. I don't know those technical terms, but the one that we have coming is like 220 pounds. So it should have enough force to not only hold itself up, but rip that thing out of the cowl if it wanted to. So fingers crossed that one works. I think it should. 220 pounds is overkill for it. Like I said, I don't know all that technical stuff, how to calculate the proper force of stuff. I could have got one that was like 22 pounds. I could have got one that was 40 pounds. They had one that was 150 pounds. So I went overkill and got the one that was 220 pounds so that we should be just fine. So today, I had said in last night's video that we were going to come back in and put the motor in so that we can run all the wiring and everything like that. Me and my buddy that owned the truck had talked, I don't know, a month or two ago about rebuilding this motor cradle mount setup that they have in here. So this is, somebody made this, and I mean it works. I'm not knocking whoever made it. It works. It did its job. It's been in there forever. But we're gonna remake it. So we're gonna keep these top sections where it actually mounts to the motor. We're gonna keep those top sections, and we're just gonna remake this bottom section. We're gonna cut that bottom section off, and we're gonna remake it. So this was the original trans mount that was in this truck. Good and sturdy, good and strong, but I remade a new one that was more custom, that fit the LS, mounting in a little bit better. You know, it's got three mounting tabs, 3 mounting holes to the frame instead of to the one that they had. They had just one holding this to the frame on each side, and I actually had to like cut part of it away when we removed this because the bolt was so close to the wall of this tube that I couldn't get a socket on it. I couldn't get a wrench on it. I tried wedging a screwdriver in between the bolt and the wall to stop it from spinning. I couldn't get it. We ended up having to cut it. At that point, you know, we had decided that we were just going to make a new one and make it right. So we did that, and I'm going to repurpose this old trans mount. I'm going to repurpose this guy. And I have some left over from building that trans mount. So this bottom, this will actually be the bottom down here. So we actually need to give us just a little bit more room. I mean, a 1/4 inch would do it. The oil pan from the LS actually hits on this lower piece that they have on there. So we're gonna bring it down just a little bit, you know, give us a little bit more room. This guy, how thick he is, he matches this brace better. So this upper brace that we're gonna reuse, it matches that. These tubes that they have, you can see, you know, they're 1.5 inches maybe, or 1 inch square tubing, and you can see how much overhang we have here. So if I use this wider stuff, we won't have that overhang, and it won't look so I don't know how to it won't look so crappy, I guess. It'll look better. It'll look like it fits it. It looks like it belongs. So we're gonna use the square tubing for the down tube to bring us down on each side. I'll be able to come up all the way. We'll match this angle. We'll be able to come up all the way and weld it so that there's no gap in here and the tube is not open to collect water or dirt or anything like that. It'll be closed off. And then we have, once I get it all built, we have actual real motor mounts. Now I'm going to get rid of this square tubing and we're going to mount this to that like so, and actually have the real mounts. So hopefully everything, you know, works out as planned. We're kind of repurposing this stuff so that we can save, you know, a little money on metal. Metal is super expensive right now. So we're going to repurpose it. We should have enough to repurpose it as long as I can get it right the first time. If we screw it up, we're kind of screwed. So let's not screw it up. But first thing that I'm gonna do is we're gonna cut this steel plate that's on here and get that off of there. I'm gonna put a couple of tacks or welds down here to kind of hold this brace down here because they have it bolted. When you unbolt those two top things, it's all loosey-goosey. So I'm gonna weld it so that it doesn't move. And then we're gonna lay it up on the table. We're gonna trace it out onto the table so that we have our magic marker trace going around it so that when we build our new one, we know that everything is going back in the same spot. I may even, once we start getting it cut apart, like tack these top pieces, once we get it cut apart, to the table. And then we'll make our lower section, we'll get it all tacked together, we'll get it put in place, and then we'll put the motor in and test fit it and make sure everything bolts up. My only concern that I have with this is the height of these compared to what's here already. Now we've already had this LS motor in here, and if I mount this on top of here, like, you can see how much lower the bolt holes are to this than what it was. So, you know, these top plates I think are gonna have to come in. We're gonna have to drill some new holes like up here and bring them in and whatnot. So there's going to be some calculating to do and making sure that everything fits the way that it's supposed to. You know, may hang the motor from the engine hoist and make this thing fit on the motor and then make it fit the truck. I don't know, we'll see, but that's what we're gonna do. Like I said, I'm gonna start cutting stuff apart and disassembling it, and we'll go from there. So I don't think that this is gonna be like a couple hour project. I think that this is gonna, we got a little bit of time that's gonna go into this, not only because we have to disassemble everything because we're utilizing used stuff to make something cool and custom, but then we got to make sure that it all works together as well. So, it's going to take a little bit of time, but let me get some glasses on my face and some gloves on my hands, and we're going to start cutting this plate off. Like I said, we're going to remove this plate. Don't need it. We'll keep it. It's a good plate.
Alright, you guys died on me. You didn't miss much. I pulled out the other 2 bolts and removed this from the truck. So, what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna trace this onto the table, just so that we have a template. I don't think that making a template is really gonna make any difference or help us any, because I think, like I said, with these being that the mount hole is going to be so much farther out than these, this whole thing's going to be wider than it was. So I don't really think it's going to make a difference, but I'd just like to be safe and have a template of what it was, because worst case scenario, I can always put it back. Alright, so now we have a template of what that looked like. And I think the next thing is going through and cutting the welds off everything and getting everything separated. We are not using this lower structure, we are using these top plates. So the same way that I just cut this steel plate off of that old trans mount is exactly how I'm going to do this. I'm not going to record that. There's going to be a lot of me just sitting there with the whiz wheel, cutting through those welds and then grinding up the pieces and getting them cleaned up. You guys just watch me do that. I'm not gonna make you watch me do it twice on another piece. And then on top of that, dude, the GoPro is so hot right now. So I'm gonna give you guys a break and let you guys cool off a little bit. So I'll see you guys when we have this cut apart and we're ready to do the next step, which I think will probably be cutting that guy in half and making the angles fit this so that that square tube fits right up against this perfectly. So that'll probably be my next step. Once we get these cut off, then we'll jump over to making those square tubes fit these pieces. Probably gonna cut these square guys off as well, and get rid of those. And when we do these tubes and get those tacked in place, our new tubes, we'll probably get these on, and we'll get these tacked in place, and then we'll get them mounted to the motor and set the motor in the truck. I think that'll be the next step after. So anyways, break time for you guys. I'm gonna get to work. Okay, we're back out here. I kind of thought about it for a little bit after I had shut the camera off earlier. I told you guys I was going to go through and cut all the welds and everything. And I was just kind of standing here staring at it and looking at it and thinking. And I decided not to go through and disassemble this guy and cut it off. What I ended up doing was I just cut off the ears that were here that bolted to the frame on each side and just left that. And then I came over here and I cleaned up the ears. I threw them in the blast cabinet, blasted them up, and I just kind of tacked them to the table on each side. And then I cut our trans member that
we were repurposing. I cut it in half and I laid it up here on the table where I thought it needed to go. I held these up. Remember, we had that old piece traced out here on the table, so I held these up where the old motor mounts went. I can look through the hole. I drew a circle at each one. I can look through. I can see my circle. So I did that on both sides, and I lined those up. And I took I took my angle of a dangle finder and I laid it up like so, and I got my angle and I put it in my chop box and we cut those angles. I made sure both angles matched from one side to the other, and I tacked those in place. And then this is what, we're going to use. This is what's left over from building the trans member. We're going to use this to go across here, and I measured from where we have it tacked on here down to this on both sides. I have it at 12.5. Both sides were even. So I think we're going to be good. We needed some more room in here. It looks like we have plenty more room now. I would say we have anywhere between like 3/4 of an inch and an inch and a half more room. And I say that like inch and a half to 3/4 or 3/4 of an inch to an inch and a half, because where the bottom of the old one sat, we got probably about 3/4 of an inch lower than where the other one sat. But the other one was curved. So where it curves up, we're about an inch and a half difference. And that's where we were hitting, was where it curved up. So where it was hitting, we probably got about an inch and a half more clearance now than we did before. So we should have no problem clearance wise now. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna cut my tacks off, and I'm gonna cut this one bar, and then we'll put this bar on that bar and we'll remark it. I have it marked, but once we cut the one bar, we'll put it on the other, we'll mark it, we'll cut it, and that way they both match. And then we'll be able to put this guy up underneath our cuts, and I'll be able to mark him, and we'll get him cut, and then we can tack it in place. We'll just have to cap these ends. Not a big deal. We'll cap those. And then the other thing that I see is, so now why this is like this, I don't know. I didn't do this part of it. So there it goes saying so again. My buddy that owns the truck is the one who test fitted this LS motor in there. And to clear the steering box, the motor is shifted in between the frame rails just a little bit. I mean, it's not noticeable when you're looking at the motor in there, but when you're looking at the engine cradle in there, you can see that the engine cradle is sitting in there crooked. And he had to do that to clear the steering box. So it's not a big deal. The drive shaft has U-joints on it. They correct whatever you're off that little bit. So it's fine. It's not the first time that I've seen motors shifted over to one side or crooked. At least when he put this in, he adjusted the motor slightly over crooked, instead of like shifting the whole motor over to one side, to where when you look in there, you can tell that the motor's not centered in the engine compartment. So at least when you're looking in there, the motor looks centered in the engine compartment. It's just crooked a little bit. So I didn't do that. That wasn't, you know, I had nothing to do with that. So if you look at where these two holes are, like, I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take this corner off of this bar on each side, and then we'll cap it and plate it, and then that way we have no issues with clearing the frame rail, because I'm worried that the very corner of our tube here, because these are twice the size of what was in there, and they didn't go all the way up to the top. They only went up to, you know, here before. We're making them go all the way to the top. So I think we're gonna have a little bit of a clearance issue on the frame rail. So we're gonna take that corner off, especially on this side. Like this side over here, like we're almost into that hole. So, but you can tell like the holes aren't even drilled in the same place. And I don't think that had nothing to do with my buddy that owns the truck. Whoever drilled those holes in there so off like that was before he even owned the truck. All he did when he installed the motor, he unbolted the old engine cradle and he slid it back some and angled it a little bit. That's all he did. So you can see here, like this is where it was mounted before, these two holes. These are the new holes where it gets mounted. So he slid it back that much, and he did it on both sides. So these were the old holes, these are the new holes, and you can see like how much it got angled, because you know it's what, quarter of an inch between, you know, from the edge of the frame rail to that hole, and then this side's like right on the edge of the frame. So there, you know, he angled it like a quarter of an inch, but he moved the whole motor back, you know, 4 inches. And you know, reason being is because, you know, it's LS motor. There's nothing on the top. There's no distributor cap up against the firewall. Like, he tucked it up against the firewall as close as he could get it, and the main reason for that was to get clearance at the front between the water pump and the radiator and fan, electric fan, radiator, electric fan. We had to get clearance there to get everything to fit. And even with him moving the motor back 4 inches, I had to move the radiator up like another 1.5 inches or so. I forget what it is that I moved the radiator, but I moved the radiator up closer to the front of the truck so that we could get the amount of room that we needed. So I think with him moving it back, we would have made it, but I mean, it would have been like super close. So me moving everything forward gave us plenty of room. He moved the motor back, I moved the radiator and fan forward. That gave us plenty of room. So, but we're cutting it really close on where this thing mounts, switching over to these tubes and running them all the way up to the top like we did. So when I have this off to cut these lines, I'm gonna nip the front corners of these bars off to give us enough room to clear the frame and be able to bolt it in. It may clear, I don't know. It'll be, it'll be close. I guess we can check it, right? So we're like half the hole. So I do need to take this off. This is hitting the frame.
So let's cut these tacks and get that off. These we're gonna end up cutting these ears off on all 4 of them because we're not gonna bolt these on. We'll get these welded on here. So we're gonna cut those ears off because you can see that they hang over. And then what we're gonna do is once we get this thing tacked well and in place and bolted into the truck, then we'll set the motor in. We'll bolt these to the motor. We'll set the motor in and get that exactly where we want it. I know I degreed the motor and everything, so I know where we were at before. We were at 4.5, so we'll make sure that we're at 4.5, and we'll get these welded on. And the reason that I'm gonna do it that way is because I know they're not straight up and down like that. They're actually angled like that. So to get the correct angle, I'm gonna mount them to the motor, and then we'll install them onto this piece. So I'm gonna put these back where I had them. Just gonna double check everything since we had it off the table. Alright. I think we're okay there. Okay, so that was real time. We didn't speed that up or slow that down there. At least not that I know of. We haven't edited it yet. But it takes so long for me to cut those because these saws with these, I don't know, grinding style blades on them, cut off wheel blades on them. If you push too hard or go too fast, the blade will warp and you won't get a straight cut. So you gotta take your time and cut very slow. I'd really like to get one of those new cold cut saws, like the Evolution, but it's just not in my budget at the moment. Maybe one day when I grow up and get big, we'll get one of those. But I've had this little saw for probably 20 years and it's done its job. So not too bad. We were off a little bit, and that was just me eyeballing and measuring. But you know, I'm trying to make it as straight as possible. I mean, if you look at these two brackets, like this bracket here is like a 1/2 inch longer than that bracket. Why they had it the way that they did, I don't know. It could have been one of those things where it was just close enough, and they did what they did. And the reason that I'm using these is because it already has the holes in it. It has the holes in the frame. They'll mount right in. I did consider using this plate that we cut off of the trans mount and just remaking new ones. This is about half the thickness of those, so I thought those would be better. And then we'd be drilling new holes and whatnot. There'd be more holes in the frame. So I just figured if we used what they used originally and just built off of those, it would make it a wee bit easier. So that's why it is the way that it is. Okay, got a metal sliver in my thumb when I picked up that. That's why you should be wearing gloves. When I picked up that plate from that trans mount, got me a piece of metal. Next we need to lop off ends like I wanted to. Oh, you guys weren't even watching. See how you are? That was not what I wanted. Should have marked it. Okay, there it is. You know, basically recycled parts. We now have you know, a new engine cradle. I'll get this cleaned up and tacked together, and we'll see how it mounts into the truck. I'll probably clean it up and get it tacked together tonight. Maybe set it in the truck and see how it looks. But I think I'm gonna end the video here, and we'll pick up tomorrow. I'm not gonna do too much more. You know, it's 10:30, so like I said, I'm gonna clean up this bottom piece a little bit, and then we'll tack it in place. I'll cut the tacks from over there. We'll flip it over. I'll put a couple more tacks in it. I'm gonna set it in there, see if we line up, and that's it. I'm calling it a night. Maybe I'll turn the camera back on when I set it in place. But for the most part, I am out of here. So remember. All right, let's see if we're even close. Too shabby. I think we need to take a little bit more off. How I took that corner of the bar off that we're now going to cap. Looks like I need to take a little bit more, and she'll drop right in place. All right, that came out pretty good. I'm happy with that. One minor adjustment tomorrow, and we'll be able to, well, they're solid. I am going to cut these top tabs back to be even with this. Cut them back a little bit farther so that we can get a good weld in there. but I'm gonna cut them back on both sides, and we should be good. So, and it looks like, you know how I was saying like one tab was longer than the other? Like it looks like we got a finger between this tab and the outer of the frame, and same thing on this side. So it looks like they match side to side, which is all I could ask for. So as long as they match side to side, I'm happy. You know, I think that looks good. The only thing that you know, I wish we could add some speed holes to this, just for aesthetics. You know, we added speed holes on this guy when we made it. We added speed holes on the trans mount when we made it, just so, you know, it looked cool. They both match. There's nothing to really add speed holes on this guy, and being that it's all box tubing, if I was to add speed holes anywhere, we'd have to get a pipe to fit in there. We'd have to weld up the pipe. Like, that's just way too much work to do on this now. You know, we've already blown the budget on this thing. So, but it is what it is. I think it'll match trans mount better than what was in here. So I'm super happy with it. So from this to that, I think you know, I think it's quite the improvement. I'm happy with it. My buddy will be happy with it. Here you guys can see, like, we just need to take like 1/8 of an inch off that guy and it'll drop right in. The holes are right there. Everything lines up. We're lined up on the other side. There goes the light. I don't know why you guys keep freaking moving around. Camera keeps dropping. So, big difference. Much better. I'm happier with that. Like I said, tomorrow we'll try and get this thing wrapped up tomorrow. We'll clean up that one edge. We'll probably end up cutting the excess off of those. I may put a couple more tacks in it just to be sure, because tomorrow we'll be setting the motor in there and we'll be lining up the new motor mounts. And if for any reason whatsoever I set the motor down onto it, or the motor shifts and bumps it or whatever, I don't want it, you know, breaking our tacks apart. So yeah, we'll see. We left off last night with just kind of setting the new engine cradle in there. I had said that, you know, we needed to trim up a little bit for it to sit perfectly in there. I actually pushed down on it and it popped in place. So where we're at now is, now that I got it popped in place, the holes aren't lined up. They're close. It's just the top plates where the holes are. Both of them need to just like spin just a little bit. A hole on each side lines up and one hole doesn't. So we just need to spin them so that they line up. So what I'm going to try and do is I'm going to try and cut, while it's in here, I'm going to try and cut my couple of tacks that I have, line up those holes and tack them back in place. I'll do one side at a time. And hopefully, because it took some pressure to pop it in place, I'm hoping that it doesn't move as I'm cutting these tacks. If it does, you know, I may have to go in and put a couple of tacks in some places so that it stays in place. I probably should just tack it right from the beginning, but it's going to be hard to get those tacks cut back out. So I'm
attempt to do it without tacking it. Maybe a waste of time, but we'll find out. Now I'm gonna take it out, and actually we're not gonna weld it up solid yet, but I'm gonna put some decent welds on there so that it won't come apart while we're setting the engine in or anything like that. So we still gotta trim the ends of these tops off, and I don't want those coming off while I'm trimming. We also, I wish I could do it in the chop box, but we need to take a little bit off each thing. Our vertical cuts that we did here that I said we're gonna cap, we still need to cap them, and that's where it's hitting the frame at. So I need to take some more off and be able to cap it, and it still fit in between the frames. So we're just gonna have to do that with a cutoff wheel. You know, kind of do it manually, I guess. Okay, we got some decent welds in there now. This won't be coming apart on us. Look, we got some good heat penetration there. So I'm gonna take a quick break. Not really a break, but I'm gonna clean up. My mess from last night is still out here, and there's just stuff that don't need to be out anymore, so I'm gonna get it put away so I'm not tripping over stuff. Once I get it put away, we'll be back. We're gonna trim these up. I want to round off the edges real nice on both of them, and then, like I said, we're gonna trim a little off of the sides so that we can cap it. We may make the caps for the bottom and the top and get those tacked in place as well. And then we can get it bolted back in, and we'll get the motor up on the engine lift, so engine hoist. Alright, I'll see you guys in a bit. Alright, I'm back. I cleaned up some of my mess. And I think I got these marked out where I want to trim them. Whoop, wrong way. Got it in the vise. Let's get to trimming.
still good. She still bolts in place. About capping all these ends. We got four caps to make. Let me see what I can find. Okay, so I got the one made. Looks good, it's hot. I traced it out, so I'm gonna cut out another one. And then we have these two triangles here, which I'll sharp, hot, sharp, whatever. So I'll get the two made for up at the top too. And then we'll be back. You just seen me make the one. You guys died, so but all I did, you guys didn't miss much. All I did was finish cleaning it up and test fitted it, and we fit good, so I'm happy with that. And then I marked out the other one and I put fresh battery in for you guys. But like I said, I'll be back after we get all the caps made, and we'll get them tacked in place. And then I think what I'm gonna do after we get these caps made and tacked in place, I think I'm gonna bolt this thing in and get it bolted in tight, and then I'm gonna do whatever welding I can on it while it's bolted in place. Reason being is because when I just held it up there a few minutes ago and we dropped all the bolts in, everything bolts up fine, it looks good, but I can tell just from these welds that I put in here, it moved. The holes are not, I had the holes lined up perfect, and they're no longer lined up perfect. So they're still lined up enough for us to get the bolts in, so that's good, but I don't want that to change. So we're gonna bolt it in. I'm gonna weld what I can with it in the truck, and then we'll finish the rest on the table and hope that it doesn't move. So but let me get the rest of these caps made and we'll be right back. All right, we got all the caps made, so let's get them tacked in place. All right, now let's hope that with these caps on here, this still fits in there, and the holes still line up, and we can bolt everything in. So before these, there was no bar here, so it was real easy to get to.
why there was 2 small washers on this side, because he's got the hole so close to the frame. Alright, let's get as much of this welded up as we can, and let's hope with it being bolted in place, it stays put. Alright, I think we'll sit and let that cool, and then we'll come back. I guess we'll unbolt it, and we'll weld up the back and the bottoms of everything, and hope everything stays put. I guess I can see if I can. Can I get the back side over here? All right, we'll let that cool off. The only thing that's left is like the back side of this plate on both sides, and then the caps. So hopefully with just that little bit that's left, it won't move. Hopefully, we'll see. But I'll see you guys back on the table. Okay, we're back over on the table here. Just gonna finish welding this up. Like I said, we got the caps that we made to finish welding, and then the back side of the cradle mounts. So let's get to it. I am going to take a grinder to this and clean some of it up. Some of it looks okay, some of it doesn't. You know, I think if I could have welded the whole thing on the table, we would have been good. But because we welded it in the car, you know, some of it was a little tough to get to, or I was in a cramped spot, you know, down on my knees, you know, inside the engine compartment. Some of it wasn't easy to get to, so
You know, the trans mount, you can see that I cleaned up, you know, like the face of everything. So, you know, I figure I'm gonna do pretty much the same thing, and clean up the face of everything. You know, the caps, we can clean those up. That's better. So, got the motor in, sitting at 0 on the gauge there. So, and we got this one back here. It's sitting just a tad bit over 5. Which is fine. Some of the stuff that I researched said 4.5, which is what we had it set at before when I did the trans mount with the old engine cradle that was in there. So we had it set at 4.5. It's between 5 and 5.5 now. So it did change just a hair. I think it's going to be fine. My buddy that owns the truck, he was saying that he was seeing stuff that like anywhere between like 4 and 7, you're okay. So if anything, it lifted the motor up just a hair, which I'm okay with because when such a huge engine compartment, and when you look in there with the LS, like it looks so tiny in there because there's no, you know, there's no carburetor sticking up with the big air cleaner or nothing. You know, it's just got this little intake in there, and it looks small. So coming up just a hair with it, I'm okay with. I think, you know, anything being up a little higher in this one is okay. We still clear our floor and everything in there because, you know, I had redid some of that firewall and I put it right back where it was. But we're still clearing there, so we're okay. Got the new motor mounts in. I do have to, I got some trimming that I need to do. We're gonna do some trimming on it and round up the edges. And then we're gonna get these welded in. Probably right now what I'm gonna do is we're just gonna weld in along the top here, and I'll probably put a tack down on the bottom where I can get to it. And then next time when we have this motor out, I'll pull that engine cradle out and we'll weld it, you know, all the way around where we can get to it. So, but while the motor's in, you know, I'm gonna run all the wiring, computers, all that stuff, get all that done while the motor's in. I'm still waiting on the shifter. Hopefully that'll be here soon. It was supposed to be here on like the 6th, then they bumped it to the 14th, and now we're the 21st, and I still don't have it. So, hopefully it'll be here soon. But right now, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna jack it back up a little bit. We're gonna pull the motor mounts out. I already marked them where I want to cut them, and like I said, we'll round up the edges so that it looks nice, and then we'll put them back in. We'll get them welded up.
so that they're permanent in there. And then I can set it back down, put the bolts back in it, and we can put the engine hoist away for now. So yeah, let's get to it. So you can see here, I have it marked driver's side and passenger side. We're going to cut this ear off, we'll round up those edges. We're going to cut this ear off, this one, we'll round up the edges. And then we'll be good to go. Good to go. Good. We got those rounded up nice and purdy. You know, they're gonna get welded in anyways, but you know, I feel better with them being cleaned up and looking nice. Sure we stick something flammable that's probably soaked in oils and gas to catch our weld splatter. As you can see, we got somewhat of a complete motor in there. I think the last video that we did, we left off with getting the motor put in place. It's been probably a little over a week, maybe right around a week since I've been out here working on this. We got family in town for the next week. So there was a lot of stuff to do around the house to get ready for them to come here. So been working last week, kind of doing that stuff and getting stuff cleaned and painted, and new lights installed, and you know, all the fun home stuff that comes along with building cars that never really gets shown. So the life outside of the car life took over the last week. So I got the intake over here. We got it set in place. It's not bolted down. I do have the front bolts just kind of hand threaded in, so we know that that's where that's sitting. And I have the wiring harness here. This wiring harness is one that's I don't know if you call this a custom wiring harness, whatnot. It's one of those wiring harnesses. There's who makes it. Hey, pay attention. So, just in case you guys didn't see it the first time, because the camera fell down. So it's one of those aftermarket wiring harnesses that eliminates everything that you don't use, you don't need. It's a standalone wiring kit. So I kind of we wired everything up, like the injectors are plugged in and sensors are plugged in and whatnot. Like this stuff, you know, I think there's a thermostat sensor that goes there that's not in this thing. We got to take it out of the old water pump housing. The alternator goes up here. Of course, the alternator is not here. And there's something else that I'm unsure of yet. It's something that's missing. We think maybe the block off plate that goes underneath the intake might have a sensor on it that one of those wires go to. I'm gonna slap a header on real quick and just make sure that the O2 sensor matches. I only have one header at the moment. The other header had to be sent out to the exhaust shop to be cut and moved so that it cleared the steering. So they have that at the moment. So I'm gonna put the other one on and just hope that if one lines up, the other one's gonna line up. There's a couple of wires that I need to plug into the transmission real quick and just make sure that those reach. And then we can drill a hole in the firewall and then take this all out and feed it through. So this is where, so it's kind of, I would like for the wiring harness to be as hidden as possible. So I'm thinking that if I drill a hole right in here, that we can, you know, we can feed this right here. And then there's no wiring harness, you know, ran out, sticking over, you know, out where you can see it. I'm hoping to be able to kind of keep it tucked in behind the motor. So, you know, when you open the hood and you're looking in here, you know, you don't really see too many wires. Now, the unfortunate thing is for the inside, for you to not be able to see it on the inside, it would have to be up here somewhere. So it's kind of, you're either going to see it on the outside when you open the hood, or you're going to see it inside when you're sitting. Kind of sucks that you're going to see it anywhere, but you know, I guess, you know, got to make that sacrifice. You know, if you're gonna see it, I would much rather see it inside the car than outside the car. Now, once we run it through this firewall, I'm gonna go straight up with it, so you're only gonna see, you know, this guy going up, and I'm going to try and tuck everything up underneath the dashboard so that you don't see it. This dashboard's really small. It's not a big dashboard, so this is going to be, you know, a little bit of a challenge. You know, you got a glove box that sticks 6 inches back. You know, you're going to have a glove box that sticks 6 inches back on this side. I'm hoping to get everything at the top of the firewall behind those glove boxes so that you don't see nothing. And remember, we have this vent that opens that has the whole mechanical setup behind it, which I did get the new guy here. I don't know if I have videoed this yet, but this is our new guy. So he is like 5 times bigger than the one that we have in there now. The one we have in there now is very small. It's very compact. I like it, but it's not strong enough to hold it. If you guys remember in previous videos, you know, it lifts it and lowers it, but under its own weight, it can't hold it. So I had to get one. Now they make them just like what I have in there. They make them. This one's 4.5 pounds. I found the exact same ones in 40 pounds. That may have worked. But you know, I don't want to keep ordering these pieces that aren't gonna work. And, you know, I'm not gonna go and return a $30 piece. By the time I box everything up, I drive 30 minutes into the next town over to return it and drive 30 minutes back. I mean, what's my time worth? I'm just gonna keep it. It's not worth returning. I mean, hopefully it'll get used eventually on something, you know, maybe a license plate bracket that raises and lowers, something that can handle the 4 pounds or 40 pounds, whatever. So I went with the bigger one, the biggest one that I could get in that size, which is, I think, 220 pounds it holds. You know, it should be able to rip that thing out of there if need be. But that's going to take up a lot of room in the center too. So, you know, we can't really put stuff in the center. We do have, this is the computer. You know, this is the computer that's got to get mounted in there somewhere. You know, we have these brackets, you know, that mount. You know, we're gonna have to mount these to the firewall. So we're gonna have to, you know, weld some bolts to the inside of the firewall and get this, you know, mounted in there. And that's what I'm saying, like, I'm hoping that I can tuck this up underneath the glove box where you don't see it. So we have that one, and then we have this one here as well, which is your speedometer, or not speedometer, gas pedal setup. So this is, you know, this has got to get put in there as well. Now, what I didn't order this kit. My buddy that owns the truck ordered it. One of the things that in the past, when we have done an LS setup in a vehicle that doesn't normally have LS, we kind of get everything set up like this, and we take some measurements, and I forget the name of the company that we used. It was somewhere out east that we used it, but we gave them all the measurements of everything, and they custom made the wiring harness to the measurements that we gave them. So there wasn't like a huge overabundance of wire that we had to try and hide. So unfortunately, we have, you know, 4 feet of wire, and some of this wire is kind of taped up. So we're, you know, there's 4 feet plus probably like another 3 feet here. That unfortunately I am going to have to, we're gonna have to roll it up and zip tie it and mount it up underneath the dashboard somewhere so that it's hidden. So that sucks. That's a lot of wire that we gotta hide. But you know, it is what it is. We're just gonna do the best we can and try and hide everything. So I wish it was a little shorter, because technically, like, all this here needed to be like right here. You know, go in through the dashboard up, you know, 8 inches maybe, and then have, see, in the, we got these back here, which is going to be a problem because that protrudes through to the inside. But, oh, excuse me, got the burpees. You know, 8 inches of wire would have been perfect to go through the firewall and just come up and, you know, bam, there's the computer. So, you know, we have all this extra wiring that we gotta figure out how to hide and route and whatnot. So we got, you know, there's some sensors down here and starter stuff. I gotta flip the trans wiring needs to go over on the other side because that's where it's plugged in at. Like I said, I'm gonna set the header in here real quick and just make sure that the O2 sensor reaches. I mean, it should. Everything seems to be long enough on this. Is O2, and that is not even close. But the O2 sensor has wire that comes off of it as well. It doesn't need to plug right into the O2 sensor. So we should be okay as far as that goes. We're not a mile off. We're only like, I don't know what I would say, maybe like 3 inches. So, and you know, I want to say that the O2 sensor has like a 6-inch wire that hangs off of it, so we should be okay there. What else did I want to do? I want to make sure that the transmission can plug in. This is where everything goes here. And that is definitely not the correct plug for that. This looks like that might work on the bottom, but that is definitely not the correct plug for whatever that is. But either way, the wiring reaches, which is what I needed to know. So now I'm gonna unplug this real quick, and I'm gonna remove the valve cover just so that we don't scratch it when we're drilling. And we will, we're gonna come from the inside, drill a hole. You'll use a hole saw, drill a hole through, and then we gotta feed all the wiring through that. So when I get this all unplugged and disconnected, we'll be back to drill a hole. Okay, so I was just looking at the wiring diagram that's for this. It does not say what size hole that is. I do not have one of those dials to read this, so I just kind of guessed with the tape measure. Yes, I love guessing when it comes to a precise thing like this. You know, I'm gonna say that we're at a 2-inch hole. Now this is just under 2 inches by a 1/16 of an inch. But if anybody's ever used a hole saw, you know, your hole always ends up a little bit bigger than what the actual size of this is. So if I use this one, it actually says 2-inch 51 millimeter on there. So I'm gonna end up with the 2-inch hole if I use this guy. So you should be good. The one that I had before that is 1 3/4, which I think is going to be too small. You know, worst case scenario, just weld up the hole. The thing that would really suck is in order to weld up the hole, I would have to pull the motor back out. So let's hope that this is right. Let's hope that this is right. Hopefully, my little drill guy here can handle drilling this hole. So this is my little Craftsman Next Tech drill that my mom got me, you know, I don't know, 15 or 20 years ago, and the batteries are shot on it, so it doesn't last very long. It's very weak. But my Black & Decker one, which, you know, if you guys have watched some of my other videos, is a very problematic drill. It's always broken. It bit the dust for the final time, so this is the only electric drill that I have at the moment. So hopefully you guys can see. So this is the area that I'm looking to pop that thing through it. Okay, wow, we have a hole. Alright, now we gotta start feeding all this through. I'm gonna put you guys on the other side. All right, hopefully we're good with that. It is a little loose in there, but like I said, my hole saw goes from 1 3/4 to 2 inch. So I don't know that we could have, I think it would have either been too tight, that we wouldn't have been able to get it in there at all. So I think that's it. That's as well as I'm going to be able to hide the wires. As far as having anything out in the open, I think that's it. I think that's a good spot. I'm happy. Now it is going to get some kind of intake cover that goes here. We do have the factory one that says Vortec. Me personally, I don't like those. If we do end up using it, I'll probably grind off the Vortec, we'll body work it out, whatnot, paint it to match the truck so that it looks decent. I know that there are some aftermarket ones that you can buy. I know he was looking at those. We may make something, I don't know. Me personally, I would like to get something that comes flat across here, that maybe we could paint Willys on it or something, and then have it come down and actually cover over the coil packs. So they do make valve cover attachments that go over the top of these, that hides coil packs. That's always an option, whatnot. So we'll see. But I think whatever we can do up here, I think maybe we can make we can make something that covers over these extra wires that are seen. Like I said, me personally, I'm not a fan of open wires. So we will do the best that we can to hide everything and cover it all up and make it look mwah. But I think that's it for this tonight. Tomorrow we'll come back out here. It's late. It's after 10 o'clock on Sunday, so we'll be back out here. If not tomorrow, Tuesday. Tomorrow's Monday. I haven't touched that in probably like a month, so it is time to get back to that. But we may be out here tomorrow and trying to figure out where exactly we're going to be mounting everything underneath the dashboard and try and get all that as possible. We left off the other day with drilling the hole in the firewall and running the wiring through it for the motor and computers and all that stuff. And there's a lot of extra wire that we need to figure out what to do with. I don't know if I'm going to try and loop it up under the dashboard, or there's on the side of the truck, the front cowl panel, on the inside there's a good opening, so I don't know if we can run up over to that and tuck the wire down inside there so that it's hidden and then back up to the computer. I know I can't go on the driver's side because it's where the gas pedal and the brake pedal is. We can't run nothing over there. And there's not a whole lot that I can run in the center of the vehicle because we have this vent thing that opens and closes in there. And you know, as you know, we had it hooked up with this little guy here, this cute little guy, and it worked, but it wasn't strong enough to keep it held up. Like, it would open it, it would close it, but if you touched it, it fell down. Like, it just wasn't strong enough. So we ordered a big boy. I think this guy's like 220 pounds. It's 1,500 newtons, whatever that is. So still 12 volt. It's 10% duty cycle, 4 millimeters per second. I do know that it is slower than this one. This one was 50 millimeters per second, so this one was a lot faster. Which I wish this new one was a little bit faster, but I guess when you go up with the weight that it can hold, the slower it gets, I guess. I don't know, but I don't know much about these things. I just know how to put them in and make them work. That's about it. But anyway, so now that we have this new, larger contraption that is going to go in there, we have even less room to run stuff through there. So I figure it'd probably be a good idea to get this situated and working and set up before we try running any of the wires through there, so that I'm not taking a step backwards because I ran the wiring through there and then I went to go do this and now the wiring's in our way. So I figured get this done first before we run the wiring, and that way we know where all our clearances are. So these were the old tabs that were on there, and if you remember, this tab and the other tab, it fell down on the floor. This and the other tab were actually connected at one point in time. We cut the center out, cleaned them up, and this is what we were using to hook this guy up to and push it open and close. And it worked great. But now we have this big boy, which would not have fit through those tabs. The big guy came with these. So it came with these. So I cut these tabs off. I cut them back, probably about just a ½ inch from center. I cut them back on both sides so that this guy will fit in between there. I put a couple of magic marker marks so that I know like where the holes were originally, and we're gonna tack this guy in place. As long as everything seems to work okay, then we'll weld it up solid. But I figured we'll start with this and get this set up, and then we'll move over to the truck. The little L bracket that I had made for this guy will not work. We'll end up doing something similar, but I'm just going to have to remake it and probably remake it bigger. It'll probably have to drop down a little farther and come over longer, farther, for everything to sit on this. And then as long as everything works, I think we'll weld it up solid. We'll make sure whatever bracket we're making for underneath the dashboard that this mounts to is made well and complete and installed, done. And then I think we'll remake these tabs right now, these little hinge tabs that I made.
They're just made out of sheet metal. I'm sure it would be fine, but I have some 1/8 inch plate steel here that will remake these out of the 1/8 inch plate steel. And once we get everything together and it's working, we'll actually weld those on so that we can eliminate these bolts. It was bolted from the factory, but you know, we got bolts up here, we got 2 bolts here, there's 3 bolts per side, there's 6 bolts that make this thing work. If we can weld those and eliminate those 4 bolts and make it so that it's only 2 bolts, there's less that can go wrong with it down the road. So but I'm thinking that we're gonna work on this until we get it done, finished. No more having to go back and weld stuff or adjust stuff or anything. Let's get it done before we move on to the next process. So and I don't know quite yet till we get this done, but I was also thinking that we may pull the brake and the gas pedal and everything out and get that finished, because right now it's just kind of screwed together and tacked together. So we need to go in and actually put nuts and bolts and weld everything solid. So I think we may do that before we run all the electrical, just so that that's finalized as well, because there is electrical stuff that runs over there, and I figured it'd probably just be easier if we just get it finalized and done. I'm going to weld where I cut these tabs off, just so that you know, this part here is still secure, because cutting those off, there was some tack welds there that when I cut it, I eliminated the tack weld. And looking inside here, like there's only a couple tack welds that hold this whole assembly on, and we just got rid of 2 of them, so I'm just going to weld those up real quick before we weld this on. Okay, it's on there. It looks pretty good. Hopefully this works so we don't have to cut it off. Give that a minute to cool before we hook our new electronic thing up to it. Don't want nothing to happen to it. I'll be back when we're cool. Alright, we let this cool off, and I had actually put the electronic motor on here, and I tried to drop it in, and this here is sticking out too far to this. It's not allowing me to drop this in. So on either side of where I welded it here, we're gonna just cut this clean off and remove this front piece here. Like I said, it's just too long and in the way. I would have to move this way out here for it to fit in there. And I don't know, you know, I guess it would still work. But, you know, sitting in the vehicle, this would have to drop down way lower down here, which gives a better chance for all this mechanism stuff to be seen when you're sitting in the vehicle. I am still trying to keep everything hidden so that you don't see it. So the closer up underneath the dashboard we can keep everything, the better. So I'm gonna cut this off. I think we'll be okay, and we'll go from there. Should drop in no problem then.
Alright, should be better. Actually looks a lot better as well. A lot cleaner. I'm much happier with the way that that looks. Let's see if she drops in. Plenty of clearance now. Super hot again. We'll be back when it cools off. Not putting electronics into something hot, so. Okay, so we got this in. It fits beautifully now, it just drops right in. This was the old makeshift, you know, just temporary, but this is what I made for the other one that we had in here. And I just don't think that this is going to work with this one. So we are way farther back, that's for sure. And I kind of see that as being a problem because we may run into a problem with it running into the gauges. We may have to flip this thing over. See what it looks like flipped over. It's definitely going to change where the hinge would go on this one, on this side. Alright, I think we can run it like that. It will give us more clearance. It will give us more clearance for any gauges that we put in here. I don't know exactly what gauge is going in here. The original one would be really cool, but it doesn't work. And finding one that actually works or sending them out to get rebuilt are really, really expensive. So he is looking at some kind of aftermarket thing that we may end up shaving this hole, putting a piece of metal in here, welding it up, and then like it may get this oval one. He's looking at an oval one, and it has, you know, speedometer and attack, and then it has like oil pressure and battery, but it's oval and it's got this billet polished thing, bezel, and I just don't know how far back those gauges are going to stick, so I don't want to run into any issues with it. I think this will work right here. We just got to make a bracket that'll work. Okay, so we got a piece of 1/8 inch steel plate. I think that we can. I think that'll work. Let me. So let me get this cut up. What we're going to do is I'm just going to cut a square out of this for right now. And then what I'll do is I'll find out where this is going to sit on here. We'll get it marked. We'll take that off. We'll tack it to this piece of metal. And then I'm just going to use a clamp. And we'll clamp this piece of metal to the bottom of this dashboard brace.
and we will hook that thing up and we'll see if it works. And then if it works, we can just weld this square to the dashboard plate, weld everything up, and it's done. So seems simple. Let's see what we can do about cutting some of this stuff out. Turn that right off. Don't need that at the moment. It's sitting right there, and I'm probably going to stand right in front of the camera. Okay, so we got it in there and it's functioning. So, only thing that I'm a little unhappy with about this, now the amount of throw that it has, you know, how far this thing extends out and goes back. I could have swore that I ordered the same thing. But apparently, so this thing, it was supposed to be 4-inch. So I ordered that one in 4-inch as well. And it seems like it probably has about 1.5 inches more throw than that one does. So when I finally hooked it up and got everything working, we ended up that plate that I made, that we just tack welded it inside the dashboard. So the one end is on the bar for the dashboard, and I have it clamped on there with the C-clamp. I had to loosen that C-clamp and let it slide all the way back up against the dashboard and reclamp it so that when it opens, it stops when it's supposed to, because it was flipping it all the way up. So now when you close it and you go down, which is a good thing, that you can close it till it goes down and then give it a couple more taps and it seals it. There's going to be a rubber seal in there. We ordered a new rubber seal that's for this vehicle, so you'll be able to suck it down onto that rubber seal, and we shouldn't have any problems with it like leaking when it rains. Air, I could really give two craps about, because this thing's so old. I mean, we're gonna try and seal it up the best that we can, but guaranteed this truck's gonna have some wind noise to it. But my main concern is that if he gets caught in the rain and he shuts that thing, that water's gonna seep in and start dripping down onto, the electronic motor for that, the gauges, on his floor, whatever. I don't want water leaking down in there. So he'll have to watch when it closes, and then a couple more taps, and it should pull it tight, sealed. But it has a lot more that it could go, and it doesn't stop. So as long as you're holding down that trigger, it's going to keep pulling on that thing. And I don't know what's going to happen. Chip some paint, cause a dent. I don't know. So unfortunately, I'm just going to have to tell him, like, hey, watch when you hear that motor slow up, it's shut. Like, don't sit there and hold the button down. Unfortunately, like I said, this one said 4-inch. I ordered 4-inch on that one. It is obviously different. It is not a 4-inch. Or actually, I think that one might be a 4-inch, and this one is not. I think maybe this one, this is 2-inch, and then this extends out 2-inch, and that's what gives you your 4-inch. Where, I don't know, maybe that one is a little different. Yeah, see, like this is like 2 1/4, and then it probably extends out, 1 3/4 inches, and that's what gives you your 4-inch. And I bet you that one is probably 2 inches, 2 1/4 inches, and then the bar that comes out is probably 2 inches or 2 1/4 inches. So it's actually got more throw on that one than this one does. Excuse me. So like I said, I'm new to this. They had the 4-inch one, and then I think the next lowest one that you could get was 1.5 inches, which I was worried that 1.5 inches was not gonna open it up far enough. We would have only been able to open it up about halfway. So I don't know, like I said, I'm a little new at it. Maybe there's some science to it to get it absolutely correct. But I think this will work just fine. It's just when you're closing it, when you hear the motor slow down, it's closed. Stop. It'll open up and stop on its own, but when it's closing, and you hear that motor slow down, stop. I think we'll be okay. Tomorrow we'll come back at it, and we'll weld everything solid. We will make the new brackets that go on each side that we made out of sheet metal. I told you we're going to transfer that over to an 1/8 inch steel plate, and we're actually going to weld those on. So yeah, stay tuned. We'll get back to it tomorrow. It's pretty late. It's after 10 o'clock already. So yeah, we'll see you tomorrow. Remember, like, subscribe, share, leave a comment, all that good YouTube stuff. Thanks. I'm out.